Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, happy Thursday. Welcome to today's grain market blast with myself, Ryan, and the amazing Angie Setzer. And Angie, as usual, will be providing a rapid roundup of the latest pricing, flows, and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, and so I don't get a tap on the shoulder from anyone in compliance, I better get the legals out of the way. So as usual, nothing discussed on this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Jones PIQ or PIQ Suite, or indeed that of the hosts, which, as we already know, is the amazing Angie and myself, Ryan.
Super awesome, Ryan.
Yes.
Do you know how hard it is for me to stay quiet while you're doing the legals?
Do you know
Like,
what?
oh,
I swear to God, I'm not making this up, but as I'm doing my little spiel in the like to start, I
yeah.
keep looking at your thing and seeing you muted. I'm like, I bet she's in there just like giggling away to herself. I'm
I'm
in
like
desperate.
chomping at the bit. There's so many things I could say, like just little smart ass comments. But I don't know why I am the way that I am. But
I am what
I
I
guess,
am.
yeah, you got to deal with it at this point. I am way too old to learn new tricks. So here we are. Happy Thursday. I thought you were gonna say
Happy
happy
birthday.
Friday. Because golly geez, I think we're just shoving like months worth of stuff into weeks anymore. And so yeah, I'm a little tired. When my alarm went off, well, when my dogs woke me up this morning at 3:15 a.m., I kind of had that little, Kenny on South Park when Eric ate all the chicken skins, sort of. That's how I felt. Just a little. Just so you know. Just wanted to tell you
I
guys
feel
that.
you. I feel you.
Yeah, so happy Thursday, lots of stuff. Trade, mostly trade, tariff talk and all of that. We did see here this morning, President Trump, we got the back and forth. So with the European Union tariffs that we saw, the response to the aluminum and steel tariffs being put back on, we did see the EU, bring back the old retaliatory tariffs that they had in the first place, starting April 1st. So we've got about 2 weeks here to get our affairs in order. And a lot of folks panicked because the April 1st list of products has corn on it, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we're going to tariff corn, and we're just going to lose all this business. But I kind of mentioned it yesterday, and I'll say it again. The European Union has never been a huge buyer of U.S. corn. This year is a little bit
Right.
different. We've seen about 2.5 million metric tons, just over that worth of sales, of which Spain has been the biggest buyer at about 1.6 million metric tons of that. These are as of last week's numbers. I haven't been able to update things as of this morning. But from an overall standpoint, we don't have a huge amount of corn outstanding that needs to go to the European Union. It's like a 500,000 metric tons, less than that, that's destined for the UK, and they aren't responding. Which the USDA probably should remove them from the anyway. They're I don't think they're rightly lumped in there. I'm just saying. I thought we had a Brexit, but anyway. We've got a little bit of corn that could head that way. They're not retaliating anyway. And then there were rumors yesterday that started to float around where people were like, well, this big book of business that we have to unknown is destined for the EU, which I think is adorable. I love that we make things up at this way. And granted, there have been some commercials that have said that there's been a larger book of business going to the EU, and that is part of unknown. But if you look back through the last several weeks and kind of started to see, where unknown is going and what we're
Yeah.
seeing, because a lot of times we will get export sales booked under unknown. The USDA says it is much better in their minds to get us the sales announcement, the knowledge that we've sold the 300,000 bushels or whatever, as opposed to where it's going. Like, they don't want to wait; they just want to tell us it's been sold, so that gets put under
Yeah.
unknown for the time being. And so, like I said, over the last several weeks, if you look, South Korea, Japan, Mexico, Colombia, our traditional buyers are who these unknown chunks are going for. Like each week, you're seeing 200 and some odd thousand metric tons peeled off unknown and going to different places. Like, today Japan had 194,000 metric ton purchased, 157,000 of that was switched from unknown. You know what I mean? So like, there's been some talk that that's problematic. Spain did show up though. That is one of the things. 66,000 metric ton was switched from unknown to Spain this morning. So it is something that we're worried about. Who is unknown? Who could cancel these purchases? What are we looking at overall? But what's been fun to see, fun in air quotes, is that, every country around the world they've seen this game before. So everyone's
Yeah.
raising their price. They're like, oh, well, it costs more for you to buy from the USDA. Looks like we need to bump our basis 25 or 30 cents. Like, what are you going to do about it? Now, that doesn't offset the entire tariff cost or anything like that. But if you have some quality differences, if you have some ability to facilitate the transaction differences and some of these other things, we'll see some back and forth. So yes, yesterday, was kind of worrisome. It was a knee-jerk reaction. We still have tariffs. We still have reciprocal tariffs hanging out, and so that's the second round of potential response from the EU. It could hold soybeans, or it could have soybeans in it. That's where the bigger risk would come, I guess you could say, if you want to call it a risk, simply because the European Union, the increase in business to the EU is something that we've been kind of counting on to offset the loss in business that we've been
Right.
anticipating out of China. And so there's a ton of questions that we still have, like, will soybeans be included? If they are, what does that mean for deforestation regulations at the end of the year? Because Brazil was thought is difficult to be able to source beans out of and meet those requirements. So it's just, there's so many moving pieces. And what's so much fun about cash grain that I absolutely love is it doesn't move, it oozes for one. So nothing is ever just like overnight, everything switches. It's just very slow to do what it needs to do and fill the cracks that need to be filled and move in different directions. But you can already see it where it's like, okay, well, if this person can't buy from these people, they'll buy from these people. That'll shorten supply that would be going to this area. Well, those people can still buy from the US. So it's a fun shell game, and everyone is just freaking out. And I don't think we need to, but I digress. That's today's focus number one. Focus number two is I'm slowly losing my mind over here, I think, but it's okay.
Tell me about it.
Right.
I'm with you.
Focus number two is South American production estimates, what we're seeing there. We are watching really closely. We're starting to see, more pictures of problematic corn, early corn, baby corn plants that are just kind of rolling themselves up into little onion-looking fields out there in parts of southern Brazil and central Brazil, where they've had some heat and dryness. It's too early to get super duper worked up, but it's definitely something to watch simply because we have this need for Brazil to produce a decent crop. We did see out of CONAB today, Brazil's version of the USDA, they are closing that gap between the USDA and private production estimates and, kind of bumping up. They bumped up their soybean number a little bit today. They're still below USDA numbers, and much of the consensus in trade, I think they're at 167 now. Most traders are around that 169 to 172-ish for Brazil. They did bump their core number up a little bit, though it's still below the USDA and private estimates as well. Argentina, we've got tale of two estimates. We've got the Buenos Aires Grain Exchange that's staying pretty close to the USDA, though when they get out their little ratings numbers, they're not the greatest. And then you have Rosario, who has been more aggressive in their trimming of production outlooks. And so we'll be watching to see there. Argentina's sales have slowed recently. Farmer selling has slowed as we try to get a grip on what exactly is going to be produced or what exactly is going to come out of the fields, what their tax rates will look like, what prices will be. And so, yeah, I mean, from an overall standpoint, if you look at the cash market out of South America as well, it continues to firm. We have seen beans back off a little bit out of Brazil, but they did have like one of the largest jumps in a week that we've seen in quite some time a week ago. So to see it back off is not entirely unexpected. But from an overall standpoint, like I'm saying, everyone around the world this go around is really kind of watching what is taking place with these tariffs and watching what is happening in the cash market and how this increases potentially. Just it depends, you know what I mean? Because we only really have China and the EU currently targeting agricultural imports with tariffs. And so we're just all watching to see how that works, how that plays out. But it is interesting to note that you are seeing basis strengthen basically around the world because everyone's like, all right, well, if US is getting more expensive, we want more money. Makes sense.
Yes.
Last point, and then I'll shut up for the day. Not really, but for this moment in time,
Good luck.
right. We've got the Russia US negotiations on what's going on towards the ceasefire and the peace deal and all of that. In theory, or you could say that Russia basically has publicly rejected the thoughts of a ceasefire, though there are people smarter than I that are saying, okay, this is just jaw-jacking by the Kremlin. This is to be expected. This is how it goes as we head into the negotiation. It doesn't mean that it's dead. But I would say Russia has taken back control of a super important logistical hub in the Kursk region here just recently. At least that's what they're saying. And some experts are saying that they, kind of have taken back the bulk of control in Kursk, pushing Ukraine out of there with their North Korean friends. And you're also seeing them make great progress, or at least holding their own very, very well along the front line. And one of the things, or three of the things that Russia has said all along when it comes to peace is no Western troops or bases. You can't say bases. I say base. I don't. Anyway, military bases in Ukraine. Bases is. You can't have them. You can't have troops. You can't have NATO. Ukraine can't be a NATO member of NATO. And then they want everyone internationally to recognize Crimea is their territory, as is what they've captured in those 4 oblasts that they're currently partying in. And so it's one of those things where I think we're so close yet so far away on getting anywhere, and maybe I'm wrong in this and Russia will agree, but this morning you did see them say that a ceasefire in their minds is just a breather for the Ukraine troops. If you look at what's taking place in the front line, this isn't my opinion, this is opinions of people much smarter than me. If you look at what's taking place on the front line, yeah. I appreciate that, but you're a liar, and it's okay. But when I reach out to people who at least have studied the whole entire scenario far better than I, they're saying that Russia is making great progress on the front lines. It's going to be difficult to kind of cool their jets to a certain extent. And so we'll see what happens. That could have a great great implications on geopolitics and how the EU negotiates with the U. Like, it's kind of crazy to think of all of the things that are interconnected to a certain extent. In the ways that nations will put pressure upon one another. And so, it'll be interesting to see how the West's role in the peace talks, and I'm not including the US in that at this point right now, how their role works with the US and with Russia and Ukraine and all pieces involved and what that means. But giddy up, I guess it keeps us with job security, right?
Yeah, no, exactly that. It gives us something to talk about every day, at least.
Luckily.
This tangled web of intrigue.
Yes.
Something
Super
like
fun.
that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm definitely losing my mind. Oh no. What day is it? What year is it?
We can
Who
lose
is the
it
president?
together. Yeah, I don't know. Did COVID happen yesterday? It feels like it. 5 years. Isn't that crazy? So it
That
is
is
one of
very
those
crazy,
things.
actually.
But this morning's export sales were great, I would say. And so we'll see what today brings. See if we can get a little bit of a bounce back. But from an overall standpoint, there's a lot of uncertainty, too much uncertainty to really see solid moves higher, I feel like, in grains until more is known on reciprocal tariffs and some of these other things. But I do feel like we're getting closer to where it's not going to be as knee jerk after a bit, but that might be April 3rd or 4th before we get there. It might be April 10th. I have no idea. But every day is another day closer, right? Yeah. When every day is another day closer to feeling like we know at least a bit more about what the hell's happening in the short term, long term. I don't know, vaya con Dios. So happy Thursday on that note. Leave it a little dark for
exactly
everyone.
that. And just a big shout out for obviously you're doing a spaces later on, aren't you, today with Chai?
Yes.
So I've put it up in the
Andre
Jumbotron
and everyone. Yeah, we're gonna talk about trade and commodity stuff. I like that. I always enjoy kind of the venturing out of the bubble of ag space and into the fintech space for a minute, and then I go right back to where I belong.
Yeah. So I thoroughly recommend everyone checks that out. But also check out us tomorrow, same time tomorrow, where it's Friday, I believe, all day.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited.
Oh God, exactly. But listeners, thank you so much for tuning in as usual, especially our regular listeners. We really, really appreciate you. And we'll see you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good one.